All right, so welcome. Been a while, but here we are back to doing some more video lessons. We're on the market revolution. So this is going to be happening during the era of good feelings. This is going to be happening around the time of the Monroe Doctrine. And we're going to take a look inward at the United States and what's going on with all of that good stuff. So our objective, we're going to explain the causes and effects of innovations in technology, agriculture, and commerce over time. Specific time would be like the mid 1800s, everything post Monroe, pre Civil War, pretty much. New set of key terms for you. Think about the innovations we're going to talk about today and how they would rank. That's going to come in handy later. So let's go ahead and get started. So again, today is the 14th if you are watching this same day. We're talking about the market revolution. So key point one, the market revolution was brought on by entrepreneurs who helped grow and organize relationships between producers and consumers. There's going to be other things that bring this up later. There's going to be government help. There's going to be social changes. But for now, we're going to focus on mainly what the market revolution was. And then we're going to focus on some of the innovations that help make it possible. And we'll get into all those social changes and everything else leading into that. So, be careful with what you write. These are some key terms you need. So keep this in mind, and then this bottom part we can just summarize. So markets and pre-industrial revolution US. What does that look like? Well, markets, it doesn't mean literal markets per se. It can, but it's more referring to the area in which commerce is taking place. So pre-industrial revolution, pre-market revolution, markets were very small. Right? It was all local stuff. You couldn't say buy a dress made in New York if you lived in Georgia, or if you lived in Virginia you couldn't buy something. It didn't work that way. And as technology improved, things got a little better over time, but then during the market revolution, boom, huge boom, all of a sudden you get closer to what is a world market where people can buy stuff from all over the world, right? Consumers are people who buy goods, producers people who make goods. Easy peasy. So again, before the market revolution, I can't stress this enough, it was difficult and expensive to get things far away. For example, in the 1820s and 30s, to get something from New York to St. Louis, Missouri would take the same amount of time and effort as it took to get something to England. It was not easy to travel over land. But during and after the revolution, new innovations in travel and technology, but especially travel, markets will grow and products will become widely available. So now all of a sudden that thing that's made in New York that's really awesome, you can get it in Virginia or Georgia and vice versa. And this is going to have huge impacts across not only the country, but the world. So we're talking about how it affects here in the US. National market economy. So for the first time, the US markets are on the national level. It's not just, hey, Frank, the local blacksmith. Now you have, companies that make tools and really good tools and tools that can go all across the country. Regional economies and specialization. Regions begin to specialize in certain markets and goods, right? So all of a sudden, you don't need a tool maker in every town. You just need the one really good brand of tools, right? DeWalt doesn't make power drills in every city. They just make them at their factory and they ship them places, right? That's nowadays. This is the start of that. It's in its infancy. It's starting to become a major aspect. Urbanization. Write down what urbanization means. Urbanization means cities began to grow and rise as time went on. And investment. Entrepreneurs and money on the rise. Basically just there's more people out there spending more money, investing in companies. Lots of money will be made during this time period from lots of different people moving forward. So, if you needed time on any of those slides, go to pause. We're moving on. Next key point. Innovations, including textile machinery, steam engines, interchangeable parts, a telegraph, and agricultural inventions, increase the efficiency of production methods. This is important. So if you need time on this pause, we're going to get into the innovations. So, textile industries. What are textiles? Textiles are cloth. Textile is cloth. First thing, the cotton gin it makes processing cotton much easier. When you pick cotton, it's a big tuft of cotton, and it's got seeds in it. What the cotton gin does, and there's not a picture of it here, but what the cotton gin does is it takes the seeds out and makes it thin material. And then you've got the spinning jenny, which is this right here. And what the spinning jenny does is it spins the cloth. It takes the material and turns it into thread. And the water frame, this powers spinning machines usually with, well, not usually, by water, running water, like a river. Can't use still water. It's not like pour water into it and it goes. It's running, flowing water. Other changes to the tech, by the way, these don't make clothes, these make cloth. Cloth is then sewed into clothes later. We'll talk about sewing machine in a little bit. Is the Lowell system. Looks something like this. Boarding houses where the young, mostly women, lived, and mill girls, because again, most of the people working in these textile mills were young women. Early textile mills needed to be near water till the steam engine, then they didn't need that anymore. But the textile industry will grow tremendously, in part because of the cotton gin, in part because of the new innovations like the spinning jenny and the water-framed spinning machine. But what you will get now is, for the first time in the United States, direct competition with like British sewn goods. Now all of the textiles aren't coming from Britain. They don't have to. We make our own here. It's something to keep in mind. So textile industry, super important. The Lowell system is the name of the factory textile mill system. The mill girls were the young ladies who worked there. They used young ladies because they didn't think they had to pay them as much because they were not meant to be main breadwinners. They used young ladies because they don't have a lot to do socially during this time. A lot of places when you were a young woman would go work in the mills for a little while and then eventually they'd go back home to get married and stuff like that. So I hesitate to say exploits, but it definitely benefits from women's social status in the era. The reason I say I hesitate to say exploits is because what this does do is it brings women out into the workforce for the first time. And it's not under the best of conditions. In fact, we'll talk about all of that in the social. I don't want to get too far ahead into a different lesson. Today's just about innovations. But so just know that, keep that in mind so we can move forward, which we're going to do as we talk about more industrial innovations. Interchangeable parts with Eli Whitney and the ability to mass produce goods. We're going to talk about this in a second. Vulcanization is just rubber making. You don't really need the name, just vulcanization, rubber making, 1844. The sewing machine. Now these are what actually make clothes, and these were they spun cloth into clothes much faster than by hand. I had a chart that I could not find for the life of me when I was putting this together that something like it would take you like 6 months to make a wedding dress and it takes like 6 hours now. It was something to that effect. It was like a ridiculous difference. Maybe not 6 months. I think it was 6 weeks. 6 weeks to 6 hours, or 2 months to 6 hours. It was something to that effect. It was crazy differences in what a sewing machine did as opposed to having to hand sew all the clothes. The steam engine. Steam engines are machines that powered machines. And you didn't need running water. You didn't need to build your factory on a river anymore. Now you could have engines, machines running your stuff. Now, interchangeable parts, the ability to mass produce goods. This is a big deal. I cannot stress how big of a deal this is. Pre-interchangeable parts, let's say we're going to use a gun because that's what it was designed for initially, but pre-interchangeable parts, if you had a gun, or any tool for that matter, that had multiple pieces to it, that was made by a gunsmith or a toolsmith, blacksmith, every piece was unique. Every gun that the gunsmith made was unique. And because of that, when it broke, you had to get it fixed by the person who fixed it, or the person who knew the person who fixed it, or by an expert. Only experts could fix complex machines or tools before interchangeable parts, because only they knew how to remake and rebuild and replace the part. With interchangeable parts, the idea of why don't we make every part the same, every single piece, you get mass production, the ability to make more than one item at once. You can make 30 items at once because I made 30 triggers and I made 30 stocks and I made 30 barrels, and you keep going on and on and on. This was a huge thing for the firearms industry, but it'll become a huge thing for pretty much everything else, whether it be these sewing machines, whether it be steam engines, everything. I cannot stress how important interchangeable parts are and the ability to mass produce. Without that, you don't get the other things, truly. So it's a big deal. It's really important. So, traditional systems, putting out system was when you would make goods for the putting out system, I'm trying to board it, is kind of like cottage industry in the sense that you're making goods at home and you're sending them somewhere else. The older system of like, hey, work at your farm and make stuff just for you is gone, right? Back in the day, though, it was basically cottage industry. When you think putting out system, think cottage industry, which is on the bottom there, working and creating goods in your home for distribution. Skilled craftsmen and apprenticeships, what does that mean? Well, it means that literally only skilled people. You need skilled labor. This requires people that know what they're doing in every sense of the word. With the market revolution, though, you get the factory system, which relies on unskilled labor. Economies, scale, mass production, standardization, a lot of water sources, and urban areas. You see this changing. It's no longer like living on the farm with all the big land and making stuff at home. You got factories now. That's a big development and big change. So, next is the telegraph. Prior to the telegraph, it literally took maybe 12 days at most, and this is the fastest, at least 12 days to get a message from London, New York to New York. With the development of the telegraph, it now becomes instant. It was patented by Samuel Morse in 1837 in the United States. He developed Morse code, which was that tapping method, right? Like long, short taps. Like that's Morse code. And the American Telegraph Company and the Western Union Company will form because of the telegraph. Agricultural innovations. Steel plow, which is something that digs up the dirt, sets it up for planting. John Deere's first steel plow prepares the ground for farming. The mechanical reaper, Cyrus McCormick, harvests the crops that are then sowed, right? So it takes up the wheat and harvests it. Doing it by itself, it replaces the work of dozens of people having to do it on their own. The next one's the cotton gin by Eli Whitney, that interchangeable parts guy, and processes raw cotton extremely effectively. So these are the agricultural innovations. We're going to talk about the cotton gin. Cotton gin gets its own slide. So the cotton gin was invented in 1793. It could process 50 pounds of cotton in one day. That's one cotton gin. It used to take a whole day to produce around, give or take, 5 pounds of cotton. So all of your slaves picking cotton, they would produce about 5 pounds in a day. With the cotton gin, that number shoots up to 50 pounds per cotton gin. The cotton gin will increase the amount of slaves in the South, in the United States. The cotton gin will lead to increasing the South's dependency on slavery. There were some people during the 1790s that truly thought slavery was going to go away, like it did in other places, like in England, around 1830, without problems. They thought that it wouldn't be an issue moving forward. You can see that with things like the Missouri Compromise, or the Northwest Ordinance, I should say, because that's before this. But with the invention of the cotton gin, it all of a sudden becomes way more profitable to grow cotton in the South than anything else. Cotton will become the number one cash crop in the United States. So if you need time to write this, and we're going to go over here. I want you to look at this chart. And what you see, in 1790, the South is producing 3,000 bales of cotton, processed cotton. And as you go through the years, let's use 1860, right before the Civil War, they're producing 3,837,402 bales of cotton. It's a lot. The reason this happens is because of something called King Cotton. Now it's called King Cotton because literally, because of this, right, because of the cotton gin, cotton will become the number one cash crop in the United States and specifically in the South, which is where all the cash crops are. South will change to completely rely on cotton. people will make massive, ridiculous, stupid fortunes on cotton and in cotton, and they will do so on the backs of slave labor. This reliance and New South will be based entirely on slavery and on cotton. King Cotton is the name of the game and plan. So again, the plan is called King Cotton, so much so that in the Civil War, the South believes that Europe and other nations will help them with trade and resources and allies and things like that, because by this time, and the reason I always like to call slavery a global sin is because it is. In 1860, 1861, in these like middle years, I would say from the 50s, honestly, the United States is producing 90% of the world's cotton. 90%. Now, mind you, this is on the backs of slave labor. This is about 20 years after England has gotten rid of slavery, and the United States is the last, main country doing it. I shouldn't say one of the last one doing it. It's the last like world power, like that's respectable. It sits at the big kids table doing this stuff. And again, 90% of the world's cotton, and it's all because of the cotton gin and because of that new reliance on slave labor. So we're at 16 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and stop this video here. I do not think that we will need more time than that. Actually, no, you know what we're going to do? We're going to move forward. Sorry. I lied. So because of legislation and because of different court systems, you get the development of things like roads, canals, and railroads, which extend and enlarge markets and help foster regional interdependence. Transportation networks will link the North and the Midwest really closely and closer than they would in the South. The South is very isolated from all these new transportation systems. So, easier transportation equals easier and better living. I want you to take a look at these. In 1800, to transport 1 ton of goods or 1 ton of anything across land, it was 30 cents per ton, per mile, which 30 cents isn't a lot, but per ton per mile, if you're going a long distance, it turns out to be a lot. It's double what it'll be in 1850, which is 15 cents by wagon train, because it just gets easier because of things like roads and trails and stuff. Now, in 1800, there is no railroad, but by 1850, when there is, it takes 4 cents. It's even less than that initial 30 cents. Now, by water, it'll be 7 cents in 1800 through canals because there's not much of them. It's hard to transport them. There's no steamboats yet. It'll be 1 cent to pull on canal boats, which are pulled by horses along the side of it. And by the time that there's steamboats, half a cent. Less than a cent to transport a ton of goods across water, specifically through canals and rivers. So this is cheaper and easier and better on everybody involved. Canals, usually state-funded. Canals were transporting goods cheaper and more efficiently. They're based on steamboats mainly. Once steamboats come around, canal steamboats put together, it is a explosion of possibilities. The Erie Canal connects Lake Erie with the Hudson River and the ocean and makes New York the best and most important port in the United States. So you gotta know Erie Canal. So by 1840, this is what the canals and river system looks like. So we're gonna move on. We don't have a lot of time to spend on the map. Let's talk about steamboats. Steam engine helped bring on the steamboats. Robert Fulton and the Clermont were the first steamboats to sail up the Hudson River. This proves that the system and the device and all that works. Will these blow up? Sure, but it proves that they work. Their impact, it decreases cost of transporting goods by like 90%. It's so much cheaper and more efficient to do this. Not to mention the fact that you get to have boats going downriver and boats going upriver because a steamboat travels upriver. And it's like it literally doubles the amount of money you can make and the amount of goods you can move. National road, early modes by foot, by pack animal, or by ship. That was the only way you could travel before. Then you get private turnpikes, private roads, and roads in general that make land travel easier. That's why initially it's 30 cents by land and then it turns into 15 cents. It just becomes easier and cheaper. The Cumberland National Road was from the Potomac River over here to the Ohio River. This is the short little national road. Cuts through the west there, again, connecting northern places. So, railroads. Railroads will become the fastest transportation and open the West for settlement and the most inexpensive. They were expensive to build for the people building them, but for the people going on the train, it was easy. Easy peasy, lemon squeeze. And the North had miles and miles of track when the South did. So these are going to really help the North. So again, wagons, canals, you got all the different modes of transport. And you see how they're more intricate in the North than they are in the South. This is what the United States looks like in 1824. To put this in perspective, when the Transcontinental Railroad is built, you can take a train from here in Missouri all the way up to California and Oregon. And it'll take you 6 days, I think, or I think it'll take you 3 days, something like that. And it used to take you 6 months. Time machines. Literally time machines. So that is it for me. Make sure you go and get your exit ticket done in Google Classroom. If you need anything, let me know on Teams. Have a great rest of your day, guys. I'll see y'all in class.